We are on.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Rob, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gorick,
Commissioner Gorick here.
Commissioner Locks. Just a reminder, everybody's gonna have to stay muted and unmute yourself. So, Commissioner Locks.
Locks here.
Okay. Commissioner Macchio. Commissioner Volpe.
Here.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Alternate Albany. Alternate Cole. Alternate Coviello.
Alternate Coviello here.
Alternate Salvocool. Secretary Santiago.
Santiago here.
Vice Chair Salka.
Salka here.
Chairman Hammersley.
Hammersley here. I heard from Jim Macchio, Teresa Albanese, and Caleb Coles that they were not going to be able to attend this evening. I'm going to see Commissioner Coviello in place of Commissioner Macchio. And with that, if we can, we have a quorum. Can we all stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
liberty,
justice
for all. And if we could remain standing just for a moment of silent reflection, please. Okay. Thank you. We get a motion to approve the minutes from our June 16th, 2020 meeting.
Commissioner Salka makes a motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Santiago, I'll second.
So Commissioner Salka made a motion, seconded by Commissioner Santiago. Is there any conversation? Anyone see anything in there that they want to talk about or change? Don't see anything. So if we can vote to approve the minutes, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Voice vote, motion passes. Moving into item number 7A, special permit application for the Briarwood Real Estate Limited Partnership for a master plan of individual uses allowed under section 3-01.2, special permit uses in the residential 8040 zones, property located at 2279 Mount Vernon Road in R40 zone. This is SPU 629. This public hearing has been continued from the original date was continued from the June 16th planning and zoning meeting. Stav, are you?
Yeah, Rob Phillips, the applicant has requested a continuance of the public hearing to the August 18th meeting. The original public hearing was open on March 17th, but by way of statutory extension time and the governor's executive order 7I that allows 90 extra additional days for extensions if necessary. They certainly can extend all the way to September 15th if need be. But at this point in time, the applicant has requested that extension to the August 18th meeting. And obviously, just recommend the chair, since it's a public hearing and there may be folks here that want to speak for or against, to allow that opportunity. I do have one email I'll have to read in the record when we get there.
So I think that, that's fine. And we'll continue the public hearing. I think they're still trying to work out where they're going to end up going. And that's probably a little bit what's behind this continuance. We'll open it up to commission members to see if they have any. Well, I guess we should just open it up to the public and see if there's anyone out there who wants to give us testimony either for or against. So if there's anyone who wanted to testify in favor of this application, could you let us know and we'll give you the floor. If you see anybody, Rob.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do before anybody speaks, I'm going to I'm going to try and maintain everybody muted, and I'm going to have to turn off the call-in users at some point in time to allow them to speak. I know I'm getting feedback right now from somebody who's on. This is the difficult part of the public hearing. So if we could just go one at a time. You can also email me if necessary, or you can use the chat function here if you can see the screen. Otherwise, I will unmute call-ins as soon as we see if anybody else is going to speak at this point in time, and then we can go from there.
So again, if there's anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this application at this time, and as we said, we're going to have the public hearing is going to be continued to the August 18th meeting, so we'll still have the opportunity to speak at that time as well. So, but if there's anyone who wishes to speak, let us know.
All right, I'm going to unmute the call-in users now. So I think we had, I'll unmute everybody for a second to be sure. If anybody wants to speak for it in favor, now would be the time.
Okay, Rob, I don't hear anybody, so.
Go ahead, Chair Hammersley, you there?
Yeah, I'm here,
Okay,
Rob.
Yep.
I just said if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this application, we'll give them the opportunity to do that at this point.
All right, I'm going to unmute everybody again.
I have,
One
Is
at a
it
time.
anybody to speak in opposition?
I have a,
I'm in position of a entity outside of the on the link.
Have you isolated who that is, Rob, or could you identify yourself just so we know?
Yeah, let me go through. I'm going to mute at least the commission members.
Oh, yeah,
And
someone
there.
who said that they wanted to talk.
Okay, is anybody here? I pretty much have all the commission members muted.
no,
Well,
mute your microphone.
time I can read the one email I did receive. Opposition. I would like to voice my stance against low-income housing at the Lincoln College property. The property should be used for something that will add value to the town or property value. Thank you, Robert Calabrese, Northridge Court.
Is that the only correspondence that you've received recently, Rob?
Yes.
Okay. So I think at this time we'll move on to item 7B. Again, the Briarwood application is going to be continued to the next meeting on August 18th. Item 7B, Lovely Development Incorporated zone change application to change the zone from R2025 to an ARC age-restricted cluster housing zone. Property located at 45 Pacer Lane, owned by Dennis Crispino. Property or parcel size 5.75 acres. Zone change number 564. Is Seb taking this for you, Mark, or?
Seb,
Yeah, Seb can lead off.
Chairman, if I may
Go ahead,
start.
Seb. Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Seb Bovino with Cratchit Jones and Associates, represent the applicant. This property is located at 45 Pacer Lane in our 2025 zone, served by public water and sewer. It is surrounded by single-family residences. The entrance to this property is a few hundred feet north of Marion Avenue. There's a small neighborhood commercial use at the corner of Marion Avenue and Pacer Lane. An additional access is from South Fork Circle to the northwest of the property. The slope of the property is moderate and generally slopes from the north to the south and southwest, where a drainage ditch collects the runoff.
Excuse me, Sev. Are you presenting anything on the screen, or do you want me to put something up for you?
Oh, if you could put up the layout, the 15-unit layout.
All right, stand by.
Go ahead, Seb. You can talk while he's doing that.
So as I was saying, the property slopes from the north to the south and southwest, where a drainage ditch collects the runoff. The property area is 5.75 acres, covered with some underbrush and trees along the south and west property lines. The center of the property is really brush and open areas. There are some wetlands associated with the drainage ditch along the west property line. In addition to the application, a property map and an area map showing properties within 500 feet were submitted. Notifications were sent to the owners as required. The certificate of mailing is provided with the application. From a development standpoint, the land could be developed by extending South Fork Circle with an A-lot single-family subdivision, or with an age-restricted development known as Arched, which will cluster the homes with a loop road system within itself and back to Pacer Lane as indicated on this map that's on the screen. To the right is Pacer Lane. On the northwest, there's all the right now from South Fork Circle. We would not be entering that with this layout. The roadway system, as you can see, it's a loop within itself and then gets out to Pacer Lane again. The proposal before you is to request an overlaid zone for the age-restricted use. This property meets all of the bulk requirements for it in terms of acreage, setbacks, frontages, and so forth. As required, we have provided a conceptual site plan, which is what you see on the screen, showing the potential layout. The current regulations allow up to 25 units. We have laid out one for 18 units, which was similar to this one. Finally decided to submit the layout that is in front of you for 15 units. The purpose of the arched zone is to increase the types of available housing and to achieve the goals of the town plan of conservation and development in providing housing options for the aging population. Lovely Development has one of these projects under construction and close to completion on South End Road, and it was very successful. I'm sure you have probably visited the site. This kind of development allows the developer to design a project which provides more open space and buffers compared to a conventional subdivision. A fact sheet was provided providing some comparison. Example, under the A-lot subdivision, single-family scenario, there will be no open space or buffers. The size of the homes will be between 25 and 3,000 square feet. Will be a larger carbon footprint. It would generate 12 children for the school system and an estimated tax revenue of $84,000. There will be costs associated with the road maintenance long term. The 15 units, however, age restricted scenario will provide 1.7 acres of open space, which works out to be 29% of the total property. The arch regulation requires 20%, so we're providing 9% more than what's required. The homes will be smaller. There will be no school children. It would generate approximately $106,000 when you count the extras that people put in the homes. The association will maintain the roads, and there will be a 20-foot minimum buffer. After the zone change and conceptual site plan approval, the applicant will have to apply for final site plan and special permit to gain the final approval, which will require an additional public hearing under Section 8 of your regulations. If you have any questions at this time, we'll be glad to answer.
Thanks, Ed. So I'm going to start by going through the commission members, and I'll just call them out. Random order here. Commissioner Gork, why don't you lead us off if you have any questions?
This is Commissioner Gwark. Sev, on the entrance to that proposed development, the 15 units to the north where it enters in, I believe I'm just looking at the Google Street View now, but is there a row of arborvitaes, and is that in that proposed entrance there, or are those going to stay, or?
We're not touching that. That's on private property.
Okay. Also, the open space that's on there, the darker green shade, it looks like.
Yes.
Is that all going to remain wooded, or is that going to be planted with a buffer afterwards, or what's the plans for the open
That would,
space?
there's some wooded areas in those areas along the boundaries. So we would not be planting new trees unless there was a gap in the trees. We can add some additional ones.
Okay. Last question here. You said they're going to be smaller. Are they going to be one-story ranch style houses, or?
One style homes similar to the ones on South End Road.
Okay, I got it.
Oh,
Got it.
it's Commissioner Gorky, and that's basically it for me. I don't have anything else at this time.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Commissioner Locks?
He took Commissioner Work, answered my questions with his questions, so I don't have any more at this time.
He has a tendency to do that, so it's all good. But good job, Jeff. You were like a mind reader, too. Commissioner Coviello?
If you could just please remain muted if you're not speaking, that'd be very helpful because it's being recorded.
So Joe Coviello?
All right. I just
Maybe
unmuted
connection.
Joe. Joe, you were muted,
Me-
so I
me?
just unmuted you.
Oh, was I? Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
The only question I have is if any thought went into a connection point at South Fork and the reasoning behind maybe why we wouldn't do that.
We were thinking not to prevent traffic from coming through this development, and also the existing residential developments to the north. They probably prefer not to have additional traffic. We could provide, if you desire that, to provide like an emergency access, which would be gated at the cul-de-sac. There would be like a stone driveway, which over time will probably grow grass over it, and then gated at the cul-de-sac to prevent any irregular use.
Okay. And did you mention, Seb, if this was public sewer or septic?
Public sewer.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Commissioner Volpe?
Yeah, good evening. You know, I was reviewing our conservation and development, and I do that there are things that pertain to needing a development like this. I am concerned, however, with applying a zone like this to such a small parcel of land surrounding residentials. So I was just wondering, Sev, if you could tell me in a few words, you know, how this will, beyond providing additional age-restricted housing, how it will contribute to the overall comprehensive plan, and does it fit within the residential properties of this area? Will it contribute to that? Understanding that we have been allowing for quite a few age-restricted housing developments and zones like this in our town, and also understanding that each of us on this commission tends to speak about overdevelopment and not favoring spot zoning. I just need in a few words how this parcel is different and why it should be zoned like this within such a small parcel surrounded by so many residential properties, if I may.
Yes. First, there's not too many large parcels left in town, so that's what you're going to see before you are these infill parcels all throughout the town, which in a way is good. It doesn't concentrate the development in a large parcel. It spreads it throughout the town, and providing access to people from the south. Instead, you're going to have let's say, development in the north end of town, some in the south end of town, east and west, so it's kind of spread out. As far as the plan of conservation, one of the goals was to provide more open space to the town without having to purchase open space, because it's hard to compete with developers when the land becomes available. And cases like this, we are providing the open space and the buffer requirements and the buffers that in a normal subdivision it's not required to do. We're reducing the traffic through the neighborhood, and the neighbors we reduce the number of children in the school system, which reduces the overall cost of the town. And the area is privately maintained, which long term it bodes well for the quality of the development, because these 15 people together can afford to maintain the area. There'll be grass cutting done at the same time. The road will be maintained properly. So you don't have one homeowner cutting the grass, another let it grow, and so forth and so on. That's the main thing for this.
So this is Commissioner Volpe again. Just taking a look at our plan of conservation and development, I want to bring two things to our attention. It was adopted and approved around 2015, 2016. And one of the things that it indicates is that many of our aging population residents are people who have been here for a long time and who are aging with our community. Meanwhile, our 15 to 30 range, which is not quite where I'm at, but we're getting there, is declining. So while we have many of these parcels already with similar zoning, being used in these areas, I wonder if, this particular area being such a small parcel and having the age restriction with it, if we are not offering a bit too much by way of age restricted housing and not allowing for the growth of that 15 to 30 longevity age group, the one that will sustain our economic base longer over time. And while I understand the argument about the taxes and the children, I am concerned about putting such a permanent and formidable change on this small parcel. So I would bring that all to each commissioner's attention. And again, our constituents are concerned about overdevelopment. So let's keep that in mind while we further this discussion. I do appreciate everything that you presented. And I look forward to hearing my fellow commissioners' comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add some more comments to what Ms. Volpe has said.
Absolutely, Seth, go ahead.
So far as age-restricted development, the only one I know is the one on South End Road, currently under construction, and then the larger one behind Walmart off of Queen Street. That's under construction. Obviously, the other one is Spring Lake Village, which has been in town forever. So we don't have, let's say, a lot of these. We are starting to get more. As you can see, this is the second one that's on an acreage of a little bit more than 5 acres. And, in the future, you'll probably see some where the acreage is larger.
Commissioner Volpe here again. Thank you, Seb. I do appreciate all of that. And I do understand the need in our town. I do think we're doing a great job as a community providing that space. So I always appreciate hearing things like this. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Christina. Commissioner Santago.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in looking at your two diagrams, it's actually when we created the arch space, I want to say it was either last year or year before, I guess it was, as I recall, one of the reasons we did it was we weren't getting a lot of open space. And so it was actually a compromise situation to say, how do we get open space without buying it? Because, like we always say, it's your property. If it's zoned appropriately, you could build what you want, within reason. We can't say no. Each application is looked upon in and of itself. But in looking at, it's interesting in looking at these two diagrams where, because the part of the idea of the arch thing was to get open space, to get more green, if you will, in developments. And as I kind of scroll between the two pictures, I see a lot of green in both of them. So it's not open space, but it's good sized. So there's a lot of green in both. There's not dark green where you can't, but it's still property there. It's not, and there's spacing from the house to the house behind it. So, it's interesting in regards to, one of the reasons to get an arch zone was indeed to get spacing and that kind of thing, and to get more green, if you will, rather than, tightly condensed stuff. So in this particular one, I don't know necessarily if we gain that much from an open space perspective. What we would gain certainly is tax revenue, as you say, and save on service. So, for one of the reasons to have an arch zone in terms of open space, which you guys are good at presenting, and the South End Roadway was a great example. This design is very similar to that, so I applaud you with your design. I think it really is a kind of a trade-off. Do we want, because either way, it's America, you can do what you want. Whether we want to have just development as you show, or the 55 and up from cost perspective, I think, because I don't think we're gaining that much in regards to greenery, if you will, just in looking at your two plans here. I think you covered it, Sev, and I apologize for not remembering. What's your square footage of the homes you're proposing?
15 to 1,700 square feet.
15 to 17 versus 2,200 to 3,000, right?
Possible.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So, I could go either way with this. I think the arch zone is actually, this size property is probably what it was there for. If you remember, we did it for actually smaller properties. We didn't do it for R80. We didn't do it for the bigger stuff. Actually, 4 places that were this big to get, with it. So it's really whether we want to, the trade-off of it. But I think pictures are good. You make a good case for it. Do we want to go this way or go a regular development in terms of what you want? I'm kind of torn between the two, quite honestly.
To answer
I don't think the gain necessarily in open space is as great here because we get a lot of green with the other one. But I do think we save on services.
What we gain here is a lot of the green is in the center of the project. As you can see, we created some interesting arrangement of green space. Which is totally different than your subdivision. You're going to be driving through here, and you just can move forward and go to the next development. The other thing, to alleviate your concerns, on the south side, the distances, those structure you see there on the south side, on the east corner, that's a barn. It was recently renovated. They have storage for cars and other things in there. Then there's a tennis court to the west of that. Then further west, you have the backyard of the next house. So these homes that you're concerned about, the actual homes are on Mount Vernon Road. These structures you see, they're accessory structures.
Gotcha.
The only ones they're really on the east side, they're the homes as you pull in on the left and on the right, you have the homes. And even those from the first unit 15 to that first home is probably almost 80 feet or more to the home, 80 to 100 feet. And the one on the right side is a little bit less. And then on the north side, all those homes.
On the website that the guy did any homework, so he has nothing added there about. Nothing changed from the April meeting there.
Okay, so let me just text Terry because she's waiting. Okay, we missed it. They are extending it.
Yes. So August 18th, I think.
Rob, can you mute folks?
Yeah, hold on. I didn't quite catch that. I'm not sure who's unmuted here. Let me see.
Okay.
Okay, so they're not talking about it tonight.
Well, they talked about it within the first 5 minutes.
Oh.
And then moved on to the next topic.
Should we let them know we can hear them?
That was it. I found them.
Thank you. Seth, with the proposal for the 55 and up, is there any modification that has to be done to South Fork Circle? Because now that's become, is the town going to have to do anything that road at all in terms of like a cul-de-sac cutout or anything like that?
No, the cul-de-sac will stay the same. It's already built and it will stay there.
All right, so we don't have, so the town doesn't have to do anything for that. This is just, you're coming off of Pacer Lane. That's it. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Peter. Commissioner Salka.
Yeah, I've taken a look at both of the proposals, and I kind of like the one with the 15 homes when we talk about the open space. I like the idea that it's with the circular. I like the idea that there's no just through traffic and it's not a standard development. So a lot of the questions that were asked, the 1,500 to 1,700 square feet, the price range, I kind of like the 15 structure development proposal, the way it's laid out. I think from a safety standpoint, I think this is appropriate for an age-restricted type development. I would not want a cut through to another area. So I like this the way it's laid out here. All the other questions that I had were answered for me. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Seb, anything?
No,
Any
Mr.
response
Chairman,
to?
I have
Go
no
ahead.
more comments.
Okay. Hey, Seb, I just have one question.
Sorry,
I guess.
Rob Phillips again. I got it. Seb, is any member of your team want to speak as well too?
Yeah,
Mark Lovely,
I
you
could,
might want to say a
yes.
few things.
Sorry to
Good evening,
interrupt.
Mr. Chairman.
I knew that someone else wanted to speak. So
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. Mark Lovely, President of Lovely Development with office at 710 Main Street, Plantsville. A couple of questions just to reiterate a little bit more. There was a question asked about arborvitaes. The arborvitaes that are there will stay, and we're planning on planting arborvitaes on the left-hand side to block that whole entrance on the way in. And we're actually planning on doing maybe little stone pillars out like we did over at the entrance of Kingsridge also when we do get into the site plan of the development if this does go forward. Size of the homes to be exact are 1,444 square feet to 1,610. Price range of those homes will start at $359,900 to $388,900. That's the same pricing that we have over at Kingsridge. Kingsridge itself has out of 15 units, 12 deposits already. We had 14 deposits there, but when two people heard about this development, they wanted to wait and see if this one was available because I have 5 people that's on the list here to buy if this does get approved because there's such a need for this in town. There's a couple, we did reach out to a lot of the neighbors before that we came in for this application, and a lot of them that we talked to voiced their opinion and didn't want to see a road go through. So that was really the reasoning for us doing that this way. The lots, if we did do an 8-lot subdivision, there would be no open space at all. There would be no trees left either because every homeowner that I have today that wants a wooded lot cuts every single tree on the lot. So when we designed the arch zone, I was a big part of that. And what happens is if you look, we talked about the town not having so much open space, so it wasn't a detriment on the town, but being able to have conservation easement over these areas so the trees never get cut. And that's what we would do on this development. And if there was spaces that were in between where there was not limited trees, we would be putting up pine trees or putting up a tree that matched so those areas would be filled in. So you get that minimum of 20% buffer and those trees will stay. Not even anybody in the association that buys in there can cut those down in the future. So that pretty much there. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I know we looked at making conservation easements instead of the town taking a lot of this property, and that's what our plan is with this development too. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, could I just a couple of things. One, this looks relatively similar to the one that you have on South End. Am I recalling that correctly, or?
Yes, it does look like it. What we did this one here, instead of going the straight on the way in, we looped the little 8s a little bit to give some more islands and stuff like that, to give it a more of a custom feel when you go in. More expensive for us to develop it, but we didn't really care about that. When we had the 18 units on here, we didn't have those, but I wanted the look to be a little bit different and have some more green space with islands and stuff like that. I didn't want it just to be about jamming in 18 homes and not making it look good. So that's why we came back with this proposal with 15 instead of 18 with these loops, so it looks a little bit nicer, more custom.
Okay, and in your letter dated May 4th, 2020, which seems to have been sent out to the neighbors, is that just the abutting neighbors, or was that some radius, or how many people did you reach out to with that?
500-foot radius we sent that out to, and we did have a lot of people call on it. We had a lot of people call. I would say we're probably, our reasoning for going for this, we did have more people that liked the fact of the 55 and up. Reason being is because I'm doing one of these in Cheshire right now. It's going to be, instead of 20 houses, it's going to be 40 of these. And what happens is, what we're doing is, we have a traffic study guy working on that one there. He says, actually, with these units here with more houses, there's less traffic than there is with a home that would sell $500,000 to $600,000 or $450,000 to $600,000. Because if you look at South End Road, all of my people that are buying in there are 70 and over. A lot of them, it's a husband and wife. They go out together a lot of times because they are retired. A lot of them only have one car. A lot of them go to Florida in the wintertime, where with the single family houses, you will have people that live in the neighborhood that have teenage kids and stuff like that. So you have a husband, a wife going to work, you have a child going to school. And the nice thing is, this is Volpe's comment, the nice thing about it is, a lot of these people that are looking to buy in here are Sullyton residents. So they're staying in Sullyton. That opens up their home for younger families to be able to buy, to be able to bring more kids into our system and our economy too.
Yeah. So what was your response to the letter that you sent out to people? How many people contacted you as a result of that, roughly?
I would say a total of about 20 contacted us. Actually, two people that live in the neighborhood, their parents want to buy here, that are in the Pacer Lane and South Fork development now, and one person that is in South Fork is interested in selling their home there and moving here. They love the neighborhood, and this is what they want. They're all ranches. They're all 3-bedroom, 2 full bath, 2-car garage. It fits in, and the prices fit in with the neighborhood too. So it's not like we're coming in here and building anything that's going to detriment the value of their property either, which is nice.
And of the people that responded, what was their reaction to the two options that you provided? Was there one that most of them were in favor of, or most of them were against, or what type of feedback did you get?
75% were in favor of the 55, and 25% were interested in the 8 lot.
Okay.
I know that there was a lot of people that wanted to know when this meeting was, that we're going to either email Rob or get on tonight to support the development too. So I imagine you've got quite a bit of emails.
Yeah, I think we got 3, Rob. I think I saw 3 letters of support or emails that came in. Is that?
Yeah. It's up on the website under the planning page, and the letter in support, Slipsky, letter in support, Boucher or Boucher, letter in support, Burton. We can go through that when we get to that portion of the meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mark. I think we'll open it up to the public now.
Thank you.
So if there's anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application.
And, I'll just start it off real quick just by mentioning these letters in support. Again, this was Stan Slipsky. And unfortunately, we don't have an address on that one, which we should have. But anyways, so that one must have gotten through somehow. If anybody is unmuted, you can just mute yourself. I hear a phone ringing. And then we've got an email in support from Pierre and Rachel Boucher. They own 57 Pacer Lane. And we've got letter in support for, let's see, Paula Burton, Southington, Connecticut's a realtor. I don't know that there's an address with that as well, too. So, although there should be. Those are the letters we received at this point in time, and I will try and see. I have a chat just for everybody, for the public consumption here. If you can see the screen and you see a little bubble at the bottom, you can actually click on that, and it's a chat function. I see somebody has lodged a comment in the chat function in opposition. We'll get to that once we get to opposition section of this public hearing. But in the meantime, what I'm going to try and do is unmute the call-in users after Chairman Hammersley asks if anybody has any comment and support. As soon as we don't hear any, I'll try and unmute those call-in users.
Okay, so if there's anyone else who would like to testify in support of this application, I think Rob's going to unmute the call-in users now, and if you could just speak up and identify yourself, and then we'll give you the floor.
Okay, everybody's unmuted that called in that I can see.
Okay, I don't see anybody. I don't hear anybody. So we'll move to anyone who'd like to speak in opposition. I saw that we had Joshua and Kelsey who sent a chat note saying they'd like to speak in opposition. So why don't we start with y'all? Go ahead. If you could just identify yourself and your address for the record.
Sure.
And then let us know what your thoughts are.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Loud and clear.
We can.
Perfect. So my name is Kelsey Tuthill. It's my husband, Joshua Bill. We live at 39 Mount Vernon Road. So I kind of pulled together a lot of information just based off of everything that we had gotten in, and I wrote up something. So if it's okay, I just want to read it because I don't want to forget something or misspeak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead.
So over the past months, we've learned the property directly home was in the process of being sold to Mr. Lovely, and as such was going to be developed. We wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case, I guess. We learned of this by looking out onto our backyard on April 7th while working from home and seeing a bulldozer tearing down the trees, shrubbery, and cattle fence that outlined the back edge of our property. Before that date, we had no notice that anything was happening. When we purchased our home in 2017, we knew that the land behind us had the potential to be developed. Due to this, we tried to do our due diligence and research that it was zoned for R20, R25 development. We had hoped that the land would not be sold while we resided here. However, we were okay conceding that if it was, the R20, R25 zoning would limit the number of houses behind us, and we felt that it would preserve our privacy. Our initial contact with Mr. Lovely came in the form of a letter stating that he had 2 proposals for the land, which you guys have kind of talked about before or talked about earlier. Nowhere in that initial letter did it indicate that a zoning change would be required for the 55 plus community. He also asked for our opinion on the 2 different layouts, and we responded to Mr. Lovely that we did not want the 55 plus, that we would definitely prefer the single family homes. We strongly object to the rezoning of the 45 Pacer Lane to the age restricted cluster housing for a couple of reasons. So the first being that based on the layout provided by Mr. Lovely, the one that you guys were all talking about with the green spaces, our property would have approximately 2.5 houses directly abutting our backyard. The stipulations for the arch state that at most he's only required to build houses. Severino, you said 20 feet. What we read was 25 from the information that we were given. So we would like some clarity on that. That we would have houses 20 to 25 feet from our property line, going from having nothing behind our home to having 2.5 houses that close is a significant change to our privacy. Further, the drawing indicates that most of the other properties who abut this land will have a significant greenery between their properties and the community that's being built, whereas ours appears to be extremely minimal. So we're, I think, behind 10, 11, and 12. So it's the space where the greenery is like extremely small. We do have some trees on the back side of our property. However, a lot of our privacy is from that tree line. And so if we cut into that and we don't replace it with anything, then it's going to thin out our property line. And our whole backyard was private before all of this kind of came into play. We also oppose the rezoning because we believe that having an arch will lower our property value. Like I said, much of our property value comes from the amount of private flat land that we own. Losing the privacy of having multiple houses behind our line will directly reduce that value. Further, the arch involves 2 circular roads which will need to be lighted. These roads will be closer to our property line and will light up our backyard. The single family home proposal was 1 street with no circles, and the lights would be better contained further away from all of the neighboring houses' property lines. Third, this is a family neighborhood. The only thing that is not family related is Sweet Mia's, which everybody gets their birthday cakes from, and Eldrin, so where you go for pizza. Beyond that, everything is neighborhood. So a 55 plus community, we do not feel will fit into the aesthetic of the surrounding neighborhoods and homes. 4, the building of 15 homes is going to take much longer than the building of 8 single-family homes. We reviewed the other Arch rezone property that Mr. Lovely is building, the Kings Ridge, and saw that he applied for the zoning change in 2018. This property is still under construction, and according to Mr. Lovely's business website, which he did clarify that 2 people had backed out, but that there were still 2 units that were available. We take this to mean that at minimum, our view from our backyard will be a construction zone for 2 years. Kings Ridge currently has minimal newly planted shrubbery. Therefore, the buffer zone that Arch promises seems to be something that is last to be implemented in the building process, which in turn means that during construction, our home will further lose its privacy. 5, part of the requirement for the Arch is requirement for no less than 10% of the homes to be workforce housing. One of the stipulations for workforce housing is that it can be a rental. We feel that this increases the likelihood of having tenants moving in and out of the community. Rentals also mean that the tenants living have less vested interest in maintaining the space as they have no equity in the space. It's also not clearly stated whether or not a tenant has to abide by the 55 plus regulation, therefore increasing the likelihood that children may live in the community, even though that's not the intention. This kind of renders that argument about not adding students into the school system null. That's what actually happens. And we may have misread it, but that's the way that we were reading it, that it's not clearly stated that they have to be 55 plus. So prior to the approval of the zoning change, we respectfully request that either the Planning or Zoning Committee or Mr. Lovely answer or address the following questions and concerns. How will the land be graded so that our backyard doesn't flood? We essentially live at the base of Mount Southington, and the property in question is a low topographical point for the entire surrounding neighborhood. We see on the layout that the stormwater area is diagonally across from our property. However, if the current natural layout can flood, the only way to manage the flooding would be to grade the land so that it drains to that one point. Building of homes changes the topography significantly. We purchased our home with the R2025 zone land behind us. Should this zoning change directly negatively impact our land or home, what recourse do we have, if any? Regardless of what the outcome of this meeting is, clearly our aim is to maintain as much of our privacy as possible. Ideally, we would like to keep our tree coverage. We need to know to what depth Mr. Lovely would be removing the currently existing mature trees. On our first encounter with the bulldozer, that man indicated that he was told that Mr. Lovely owned 10 feet past the currently existing cattle fence. This is not congruent with what we were told when we purchased the home, because our stake in the land, the stake that was put there by the surveyors, is actually past where the cattle fence is. So we're just wondering if somebody's going to come out and actually explicitly demarcate where the zoning line is so that we know, what trees are going to stay and which trees are going to disappear. Should the land, okay, so if the process of clearing the land, during the process of clearing the land, it involved pushing the cleared debris towards and into our backyard. We really just find that kind of unacceptable. The construction that's going on, it's going to happen no matter what we do one way or another. However, if it's going to continue getting pushed onto our land, we really should not have that happen. We're ultimately going to lose more mature tree coverage than we should. And we will not support or agree to having builders or contractors on our property unless it's directly requested and agreed upon. And I promise I'm almost done. I'm sorry, guys. So the last little bit is we reviewed the provided documents to the letters in favor, and we saw that there was a letter from Stan Slipsky. It was a brief letter. We sort of took a look at everybody who had submitted the letters, and we cross-referenced Mr. Slipsky's name to the list of people who had a budding property. We were unable to find him on that list, so then we looked a little bit deeper to see where in Southington Mr. Slipsky actually owns property. We're unable to locate any property with his name specifically on it that would be directly impacted by this project. We're just wanting some more information regarding which property Mr. Slipsky owns that's impacted, or why Mr. Slipsky's letter holds value in this matter. If we can't find any information, we're just kindly asking that that letter be rescinded, as he has no stake in his proposal. And then of the 3 letters that were posted on the website in support of the proposal, only one appears to be a direct landowner, a landowner directly impacted. So we're just wanting to make sure that our voice is heard as well, and that people who are going to be directly impacted by this project get to say kind of how we feel, because it's going to be a big impact on us. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys all taking the time to, do this and go through all of this. So that's it.
I appreciate your comments, Kelsey, and the way that we do things. I don't know if this is your first P&Z meeting, but the way that we do things is that we allow anybody can come and testify, regardless of whether they're budding property owners or not.
Okay.
And we take all that into consideration during our deliberation. So I appreciate your comments. I made some notes. I'm sure that Mark and Sev made notes. We'll go through everybody. Then we'll give them the opportunity to address your concerns. But right now I'm going to open it up to commission members to see if they have any questions. I'll go down my list for you specifically, or your husband. And we'll do that. And I promise you that Mark and Sev will respond to your concerns. And I made a list, as I said, to try to keep them on task for that. So if you could sort of bear with us on that. And at this point, I'll just open it up to commission members, and we'll start with Commissioner Gwark again. Do you have any questions?
This is Commissioner Gwark. I would just like to hear from Mr. Lovely and Mr. Bovino, just their answers to those questions. I know some of them may not have any weight, like rescinding the letter that was written by Mr. Slipsky, but I'd like to hear from them first.
We'll get to Sev and to Mark after everyone has had an opportunity to testify, just as a way to move the process along, because I'm sure that the next person, Catherine, there is going to have some things that maybe Kelsey or Joshua didn't bring up. So rather than go back and forth, that's typically the way that we do it. So if you don't have any questions for Kelsey, Jeff, I'll just move on to Commissioner Locks.
Yep, no questions here.
I would just like to know a little bit more about Mark Lovely's plans of the tree removal, the concern with the neighbors in that area. That's all.
Okay. So Mark, just make note of that. I have a note here, so just be prepared to speak to that when we come back to y'all. Commissioner Coviello. Joe?
While I'm turning him on, I think we still had comments from at least Catherine Laconis.
Yep, I'm going to go back to her.
Yeah, let me just turn on Joe.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, guys. I was on mute. Yeah, nothing additional at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Commissioner Volpe?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Joshua and Kelsey. Is that correct, Kelsey? I just want to make sure I get it right. Thank you so much. This is Commissioner Volpe. I just wanted to clarify, you had mentioned that you saw some, construction happening outside of your house in early May. Can you just give me that date again? I wasn't able to write it down.
April 7th.
April 7th. I was
And
on
just
your
for the
phone
record,
call, so that's why
I feel you. I've been there. We've all been there. So that was April. And then when did you receive Mr. Lovely's letter?
That I don't have
in front of you. That's fine. Just for noted to my
It's
fellow
dated
legislators.
May 4th.
May 4th.
May 4th. Okay, so that was one thing. The other thing I would like to have addressed concerning some of Kelsey and Joshua's comments when we do get to hear from it. In our POCD, one of the things that we define with open space is that it's actually usable open space. So we see a lot of green on both of these. There was mention that there is a concern on Mr. Lovely's end for keeping some of the native flora and fauna and not cutting it all down, which seems contradictory to the comments we just heard. I'd just like to understand, one of the action items in our POCD is conducting some sort of equivalency factor on, is it open space or is it just land that is called open space? How is this going to be usable, knowing that this is now a neighborhood full of kids and all the concerns that this couple just brought up? I want to hear a little bit more about that, please. And thank you again, Kelsey and Joshua.
Thank you.
Okay, so I made a note, Christina, on the open space thing, and we'll ask Mark and Sev to address that. Commissioner Santago?
Thank you. So, Kelsey, and Joshua, so just to be clear, so you would vote for the single-family house versus the 55 and up, correct?
Absolutely.
Even though you heard Mr. Lovely saying, if I have a single-family home, the people who want single-family homes don't want any trees on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking down all the trees versus the 55 and up that has buffer zones. You'd still opt for the single family?
Yeah, our biggest contention is how close the 55 plus houses are, even with the fact that it gives the buffer zone. Like if somebody who lives in that 55 plus housing is sitting on their back deck, we're going to be able to hear them while we're in our backyard. So that's, I think, our biggest contention. And I would say that typically when somebody builds a home on a new plot of land, yes, they may clear it out to give themselves more space to use. However, most of the time, the amount of land that they're clearing out is specifically for their backyard and not their front yard. So nobody's going to be putting their house in the back of their land.
Yep.
So I think that we would give us more of that privacy factor.
Okay. Okay. That's all I got. Thanks.
You all set, Peter? Okay, Commissioner Salka?
I have no questions at this time. I'd like to hear what Mark and Seb have in responding to both Kelsey and Joshua.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Bob. Catherine Lucas, or Lunicus? I'm saying that wrong, I'm sure. Laconis, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Catherine, if you could just identify yourself and your address, just so we have it for the record, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for letting us speak. My name is Catherine Laconis. My husband Wayne and I own the property at 23 Mount Vernon Road. We're speaking in opposition of the proposed zoning change for the property located at 45 Pacer Lane from R2025 to Arch Age Restricted Cluster Housing Zone. We purchased our home in 2015 and we knew that there would be housing built behind us, and we just assumed that it would be consistent with the existing neighborhoods, the R2025 neighborhoods. They're spaced well, they're maintained impeccably due to their high price point of the homes. We feel that having an arch area will be too clustered and will not be consistent with the current aesthetic of the neighborhoods. And I completely echo the concerns that Commissioner Volpe had about being too clustered, too much in one area. We've already seen also a significant increase in wildlife activity in our yard due to their decreased habitat. And once that area is cleared completely, where are these animals going to go? And that's no matter what is built there, it's going to happen. We really do echo our neighbors' concern about the effect that the development will have on the flow of water in the area. And we're just wondering if we would have any recourse if our property is negatively impacted in the future. I'm very concerned about the workforce housing issue. With this current 13 houses, that would mean 1.3 of them have to be affordable housing. How would that fit into the current neighborhood? Also, quite a few people brought up, well, Seb brought it up and Mr. Lovely did, about having it connect to South Fourth Circle would be a cut through in the neighborhood. It's a very low trafficked neighborhood that would not increase people speeding through the neighborhood by having it form a circle. And I think the bottom line comes down to selling 13 homes at 375 or whatever, as opposed to 8 homes over 450. There's a net of $2 million there. And did my husband have anything to add?
I think you said it all.
Okay. Thank you for letting us speak. We appreciate it.
Good job, Wayne.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, thank you, Catherine, for your comments, and Wayne as well. I'll open it up to Commissioner Gwark to see if he has any questions for you.
This is Commissioner Gwark. No questions. I'll save my comments for when we go into deliberation, I guess you want to call it, but I'll save my piece for then.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Commissioner Locks?
Same way, I'll wait to the end when we have everybody's answers and questions answered.
Okay. Commissioner Coviello?
I'm good for now, Bob. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Volpe?
Mr. Volpe here. Thank you, Catherine and Wayne, for your comments. No, I don't have any at this time. I do appreciate the concern for the wildlife over there, though. That's a good thing to bring up.
Okay. Commissioner Santiago?
Seems like we have some wildlife right now. I'm good. I'll wait till the end. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Peter. Commissioner Salka?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Okay. Catherine, I think that's it for now. You want to stick around and just listen to Mark and Seb's reaction to the questions that are being brought up. I'm going to move on to Ed Sear or Cryer is next.
There
we are.
There he is.
You had it right the first
Go
time.
ahead,
Ed Sear. Ed Sear here.
Ed Sear,
Yeah, I live over at 161 Mount Vernon Road. Sorry, I'm not as prepared as everyone else is. I'm kind of a little late to this game. I'm just curious about the impact of the. I understand the impact on the. I believe it's the south side of this project coming in. I'm just curious here about the impact to the residents who are bordering the west side. So where the stormwater areas and all that stuff. What kind of construction are we looking at over there? And I'm just curious about that.
Okay. We'll make sure it gets answered. Anything else, Ed, or is that it for now?
Pretty much that's it.
Okay. So I'm just going to assume that commissioners don't have any questions, but we'll give them a second if they can just poke us and let us know if they have any questions for Ed.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask one question concerning.
Bob Solka, go ahead.
I'd like to one question concerning the 15 home development side. What specifically would be in the covenant with regards to pools in the backyard, for example? Because some of the concerns have been that they're going to encroach pretty close to some other properties. If we look at the standard residential development, they allow for pools in the backyard, noise, because we have it here, even though we have a covenant. And I guess the question would be, in a 55 and older, the covenant, would that preclude pools in the backyard, for example, which could help buffer versus the standard development with pools right on, 10 feet from the property line in the backyards? That would be a concern that I would have.
Okay, Bob, your question is more for Mark and for Sev. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, we're not quite there yet. I got to get through the people who are testifying still. So I think that's a good question. Let's see if there's anyone else who wants to testify in opposition on this, and then we're going to open it up to Mark and Sev to respond to your question included, Commissioner Salka, if that's okay with you.
It works for me.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Rob Phillips, you want to open it up to call-in users to see if there's anyone there?
Yeah, I've actually had them unmuted. Yeah, no one's there.
Oh, okay. I see they're all unmuted, so. Okay, so Mark and Sev, I don't know if we were taking notes or if you want me to lead that discussion, but if you want to respond to the comments that were made by the couple, three, four people that testified in opposition. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Seb Bovino. I'd like to address the concerns.
Go ahead, Seth.
Thank you. In regard to the dozer being there this spring, I was there doing soil testing. Before we do any development, usually we have to do soil testing. So we were clearing the area for the dozer. The dozer actually was, we had a tree cutter, and then we had the dozer itself. There was had to push some of the brush because the tree cutter didn't do enough cutting. So that was the reason for the dozer, the backhoe to be there, because we had to do soil testing all over the property. And by the way, as it was stated before, the single lots can cut trees to the property line, and they don't have to put any buffer on it. The property line I'm concerned about, that we are past the property line. It's not going to happen. We're going to stake the property line. We have an A2 survey submitted with the application. So we'll be able to stake the property line so the neighbor can see where the actual line is. And that way she can calculate the distance to the homes. During construction, there will be a limited clearing on the map. Before we get the approvals, the map will show limited clearing. That limited clearing will be staked in the field, and it will not be encroached upon. There will be possibly orange construction fence and silt fence to delineate that area, so they will not be encroached upon. The setback distance for this development is 25 feet. And for our 2025, the rear yard, I believe, is the same. The homes here, the two closest homes, which are number 10 and 11, one corner of the home is probably at 40 feet or so from the property line. But we got to keep in mind the buffer of 20 feet is mandatory, which means there will be either there's a buffer there or it will be planted to create the buffer. So from the property line going north, you'll have a buffer of 20 feet. Plus there will be some space between the buffer and the home. And those two are the closest ones. All the other ones are further away. The tree removal, in the open space area, there will not be any tree removal. And as I stated, in the center of the property, there's not too many trees. But if there are some that we can save them, we'll be glad to do so. We have the design, as you can see, we have that 8 configuration there. If we can incorporate the trees within those green spaces, we'll do that. Usable open space versus passive. So there's two kinds of open space. Some are usable, where it means you can walk, you can play ball, you can be active on it. And some dedicate the open space so that wildlife can take advantage of it, and it does not have to be used by people. In this case, in the center of the project, there will be open space that can be used. On the periphery, we can grow and keep it wild and maintained by the association. If there's anything that the commission has in mind that they would like to see some kind of a area dedicated to active open space, we could look at it and see maybe in the northeast corner, there could be some room there to do some. Insofar as drainage is concerned, we are required to do 0 increase in runoff, which means no additional water will be going on property owners abutting us. And the property owners that have land to the south on Mount Vernon Road, our land does not drain onto theirs. Actually, their land drains onto ours. And the drainage will go west to the drainage ditch that's there now. And that drainage ditch takes also some water from Mount Vernon Road. As far as impact to the west side properties, as you can see, there's open space there larger than in other areas, and that will remain. There will be no tree cutting, no clearing of that area. And again, the drainage will go into the ditch, will not be going upstream. The homes on Mount Vernon Road, they're pitching toward this ditch, the drainage ditch. And so far as swimming pools, I'll let Mark answer that question if there's a covenant where there's no construction of swimming pools.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. Mark Levy again. Couple of comments. I'm just going to go down my list that I had. So much on the lower of the property values because these are ranch homes. The 2,300 square foot meals that we would be building there would go for about $450,000. Would sell for $295 $195 a square foot. The 1,444 homes, the ranches that are 3-bedroom, about 2-car garages are going to sell for $249 a square foot because ranches cost more to build, and these are custom built for seniors with different type showers, different type doors, and different things like that. So as far as the property values, these would not hurt the property values in the neighborhood at all. The lighting, there was a question on lighting for the street lighting. All these are more residential type lighting, which will be full cutoff. They're not going to be like big street lights like you would see in a, that would be if we do go into a town-owned road that would go through to the cul-de-sac on South Fork. Timing, there was a question on timing of when we started South End Road. I mean, people should go out there and look. We started construction in December of last year, went through the winter building the roads. We already have 3 families living in there in 7 months and 2 more moving in next week. We'll be done and finished in there probably within a year to a year and a month. If I was to take do this with the, we would be in there for over 2 years, because it takes me 4.5 to 5 months to build a 2,300 square foot colonial. Where these, we just built one of these ranches in 60 days. Somebody's moving in, so we built it in 2 months, and the max is 3 months to build these. And this development would be the exact same. A couple things, there's no rentals. We don't plan on doing any rentals here. All of the units that we do are for sale. The 2 affordables that are over at South End Road have already sold, and there's a need for more affordables. Both of those people are in their 70s, and we're so happy that they were able to buy a brand new home. The affordables, there's not a different thing at all from the ones that are selling from 359 to the affordable. By state law, they can't be any smaller, they can't be any less quality, they can't be any different. This community is going to have all homes, not a one will be the same exact color next to each other. You might have a couple of shades of gray, but they won't be exactly the same next to each other. So we don't, it's more of a custom style development. If we were to come in and do this as an 8-lot subdivision, just like if you want to take a perfect example, go up to Balmoral that we just approved off the Westwoods. We clear cut the whole development up front now. We don't leave a tree, because what happens is every neighbor costs us more money to be able to do. So we would go right to the property line within the property line and cut every single tree right to the property line, right up front from day one. If we do a 55 and up community like this, what we do is we have Cratchit Jones come in, flag the buffer zone. It's approved. We would take and cut to that buffer zone, not cut anything on. And if there was an area where there was not enough vegetation, we would put that vegetation in and install it. Reason it's South End Road, there hasn't been that vegetation done yet, is because we don't do it till the end. And with this heat right now, you have to do that in September. We only started that development in December in the middle of winter. So with this heat, you wouldn't want to plant that right now. And that's why that's not done. That'll get done this fall, mid-September. Question about pools. There's no pools allowed in this type of community. The community is, the association takes care of the yards, they take care of plowing of the driveways, they take care of the garbage, and they take care of plowing of the roads and everything like that. But there is no pools allowed where with a single family residential, somebody could put a pool 10 feet from the property line. Let me see if there's anything else. I think I went down through my list. If there's anything else, I'd be happy to answer it.
Yeah, Mark, Kelsey had a question about the 55 and older requirement and how enforceable that is. Could you speak to that?
Yes, what we do is we do have an association documents that every buyer has to sign that they got a copy of, and they have 15 days by state law to review it. We get a copy of their license, and it does say in that there can be no children under 18 years old that can live there. And it's stated right in there that they cannot have anybody 55 and up can own that home or reside there. So it has to be 55 and up. It's in the condo docs, and that is filed on the land records in the deed.
Okay. Okay. I think that I checked off everything on my list. So let's go back to the commissioners and see if they have any questions. Commissioner Gork.
This is Commissioner Gwark. I believe Mark and Sev answered everything that I had written down, so I have no further questions.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Commissioner Locks.
Do not have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Hello.
Sorry about that. I was having trouble coming off mute. No, I'm good from my end. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Commissioner Volpe?
Yeah, I just need some clarification. Of course, Commissioner Volpe here. Of course, I need clarification. The subdivision and both of the conceptual plans that were given to us, I just want to be sure, Rob, maybe you can answer this for me, that a final plan would have to be approved, correct, for either of them?
Yes, assuming, okay, I'm good. Assuming that that this application is approved for zone change, what would follow after that would be a special permit, which requires another public hearing along with a site plan. So, they'd have to meet the regulations of the site plan, and the special permit process public hearing would also allow the commission a little discretion as far as how exactly the layout's going to be done, any buffering that's necessary, anything else that you may find that is subject to a modification to the proposal. So
Can I go? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead. You were first.
No, I'm done.
Okay, my bad. I'm just like, Commissioner Volpe here again. So that goes for the subdivision lot as well that was proposed. We would have to see that again in the final plan, correct? Or
Okay,
no?
so yeah, if
I'm
this
seeing
was,
heads.
yeah, if the other proposal, if this was denied, let's just say, and the other proposal for single family homes came forward, you would only be looking at a subdivision application. So that's not a public hearing requirement. So literally, if it meets the regulations, subdivisions and site plans, by statute, basically, if they meet the regulations, they must be approved. You have a duty to approve them. But you can always, make some stipulations on a special permit process, which the subdivision would not be a public hearing special permit process.
That's all for me, Chair Hammersley. I would recommend possibly pushing this public hearing to get some more information about how this would affect the overall character of this neighborhood based off of the comments that we got. I actually have one more question. Marion Ave Historic District, Commissioner Volpe, same person, same asking questions. The Marion Ave Historic District, does it abut this parcel in any kind of way? How close is it to this? Take a moment. Because that would significantly contribute to my, understanding of the character of that neighborhood. Also understanding that we don't have many provisions for the preservation of the historic landscapes in our town. So I would want to know that driving in this community, it would remain in the character that it has been historically.
Yeah, the Marion, Mr. Mark Lovely, President of Lovely Development, that Marion Avenue, Marion Historic District is probably about, I would say, just under a half a mile south of this, heading around along Marion Avenue.
Commissioner Volpe, Rob Phillips again. I just have a question for the applicant real quick on my comments that I made. Was the property in question part of a subdivision previously?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. If that's the case, and I thought that might have been the case, that may be a situation if they go forward with single family homes that could be considered a re-subdivision. And of course, by state statute, a re-subdivision would require a public hearing. So that may not be that may be the one caveat here, is that there may be a public hearing involved as well in the other proposal.
Yeah, this section was never subdivided, Rob. This was a separate section owned by the mother from the original pace.
Okay, so it wasn't subject originally to a subdivision. Okay, so maybe we're back to square one. I can confirm that. Continue.
Rob, what was an overall concept that was approved for the entire property, and then was developed in phases, and this was other land off, so we kept on doing different phases without a new public hearing.
All right, yeah, that's something I would have to confirm, that there was remaining land, so to speak. But sometimes that in of itself is a subdivision. So it's something I'd have to look at from a technical standpoint if we end up in that spot.
Okay. Commissioner Volpe here again. Thank you for the clarification on all sides. It just concerns me that some of the language in the May 4th letter makes it seem like it's this or that, but you do, as constituents, have a right to come to a public hearing, whether the zone change happens, if it does go through, to kind of voice your concerns over what it looks like regarding your properties. So I digress. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Christina. Commissioner Santago?
Yes, thank you. So the only other question that we had, Seb, so Kelsey brought up units 10, 11, and 12 in regard to multiple, I'll say, units abutting property. So if indeed the zone change went through when we come back for site plan, perhaps there is an opportunity to rearrange, still have 15 units, but maybe look at that in a slightly different way so as to, maybe change that. Just a suggestion, but that was one other thing in regards to public comment that we didn't kind of talk about in regards to one property having 3 units versus 1 or 2. So that was a note that I had that we didn't talk about. But again, that's a site plan thing. We don't have to talk about it today. But again, that's a site plan that I don't know if you want to look at, should it go through. In regards to we do a change tonight, the idea of cluster versus family, that's why we made the arch. That was our trade-off, was do we want more open/green space where the town gains that, the town gains not having to have town services, and we give up, we say give up, but the developer gets to put in more units. That's the whole point. And it's for property just like this. Small like this, in a neighborhood like this. That's why we did it way back when, or last year, 2 years ago. I forget when we did it. Seems 2 years ago, I guess, why we did. So that was the point. So this is exactly what it is. You either like it or you don't. But I think design-wise, you guys did a nice job, and it is in keeping with the spirit of the zone. I would just say perhaps, if we got the site plan, there could be a little bit of leeway there, I think. As well, when we talk about a site plan, as there's always give and take whenever we do a site plan. But for tonight, we're not talking about that. We're talking about whether we want to make a change to this 5-acre parcel. That's all I got.
Thanks, Peter. Mark or Sav, you have any reaction to Peter? Or
Yes, where those units are, we can look at sliding those a little farther away. I mean, with a single family lot, somebody could put a shed right 10 feet from the property line, where these houses right now are 40 feet from the property line, and we can always add more buffering in also. But we can look at pushing that road over and moving that around a little bit. That's not a problem. We do get the site plan. But even if there wasn't enough trees, we would look at buffering it, because we buffer all these developments is what we try and do also.
Great. Great.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Commissioner Salka.
Nothing at this time.
You all set? Okay. So I want to ask if there's a reason to keep the public hearing open. I think from an administrative standpoint, Rob, you're not waiting on anything, or we're not waiting on anything to move this along, or?
Yeah, no, we have what we need for the zone change application as far as a procedural standpoint.
Okay. Commissioner Volpe, you had voiced that you thought it might be a good idea to keep it open to get some additional information. Could I just ask what type of information are you looking for?
Well, regarding the subdivision of the parcel that Rob just brought up, I think that's kind of important to making deciding. I think sometimes these things are presented like finality, but if there is in fact a previous subdivision of that parcel that could create an open hearing, and there's been a voice of public concern about the age-restricted zoning in this area, I think we have a right to kind of find that information out and then discuss it further from that point. I mean, I would say that I understand why we have the age-restricted overlay. As Mr. Lovely commented, he was part of developing that a year ago, earlier in this meeting. So I just want to ensure that we're not doing anything like spot zoning, because it does show favoritism to allow a zone change like this in such a small parcel just for that parcel. And I'm concerned about that. So I want to have all of the things in front of me and understand what I'm looking at, especially in light of some of the comments from the public this evening.
Well, let me just be clear on a very broad set. Any commissioner who's asking for a continuance of a public hearing, I'm inclined to allow for that continuance to occur. I just want to make sure that if you're looking for something that Rob and Mark and Sev know what you're looking for, so that they can gather that up before we come back again a month from now to have that for us. I don't want to keep the public hearing open for the sake of keeping the public hearing open. But if you're looking for something specific, and I think you outlined some of that just now when I asked, I have no problem keeping it open. I just want to make sure that they know what they have to go find and bring to us for our next meeting on the 16th of or 18th of August.
Commissioner Volpe here again. 3 different answers just now. So I don't, Rob, can you definitively tell me right now if this parcel has already been subdivided, and can we add that to the comments that have been made tonight?
I'd have to look at the original approval just to verify whether, and again, it's a procedural standpoint, whether the subdivision is a re-subdivision or a standard subdivision. And in one case, it would not require a public hearing. In another, it would. And certainly with the proposal for the age-restricted cluster housing, that definitely requires a public hearing for the special permit.
So I think either way, Christina, if I might, I think either way, we're coming back here in some form. So whether if we approve this tonight, this zone change, we're coming back under a site plan, and there's going to be a public hearing on the actual development. If it's a subdivision that's not been previously approved, which is one of the options, right? Then we're looking at a public hearing as well as a site plan, just like we would if the ARC zone was approved. If we're looking at a subdivision that's already been approved, they still have to give us a site plan, which isn't subject to a public hearing, but it would be subject to questions and answers and review by the commission under the business section. Is that accurate, Rob?
That's correct.
And if I could just,
yeah, and Commissioner Volpe here, just real quick, and to kind of echo what you said, though, I don't think we should approve the ARC zone just because it's in front of us tonight. I just want to look at it comprehensively, and I think each commissioner should take that in.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I may make a comment regarding that. Whatever we find out about the subdivision, which is for single family, it does not change what's in front of you tonight for decision. The request for you tonight is for an arch overlay. It's not for an A-lot subdivision. The A-lot subdivision was a piece of information to show you what could happen. Now, the procedural matter regarding that A-lot subdivision is irrelevant to your decision about the arch proposal and request and the merits of the application.
And if I might add in, I was the one who developed the last portion of Pacer Lane, and it was more lots than this, and we did not have to do a public hearing for that subdivision because it was not a subdivision before, and this is the last phase of that.
Okay. Thanks, Evan. Mark, I appreciate your perspective. Christina, it's up to you. Do you want to continue this, or any other commission member for that matter? If there's any other commission member who'd like to continue this, I'd be interested in knowing.
Commissioner Volpe here. We can go ahead if you'd like, Mr. Chair. I would just like to point out to Seb, though, that both plans are consensual, and everything submitted this evening does corroborate to my decision, including public comments and concerns from the constituents. So I do believe that everything you submitted tonight should be taken into account when making our decision, including the comments made and the questions being asked. So while I appreciate your comment, I do feel it is my right as a commissioner to ask these questions. So thank you.
So do you have an objection to closing the public hearing on this?
No, I do not have an objection to closing the public hearing at this time. We can go ahead.
Any other commission member has an objection to closing the public hearing on this application? If you do, just unmute yourself and let us know, please. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing on that application and move on to item 7C, David Posadas, home occupation application to conduct mostly online sales of firearms, and we'll be accepting transfers which will be conducted on premises with the parties involved, property located at 258 Jude Lane in our 2020 or 2025 zone, home occupation number 74. Before we get into this, I asked Rob Phillips to just explain to us, I think this is the first home application or occupation application that we've seen since most of the members were seated. So Rob, if you can frame the issue on why this is in front of us and just talk about that portion of our regulation, please.
Sure. So home occupation by definition, and it's in section 2-08 home occupation, and I'll just read it for you, just so it's clear. Certain limited uses such as dressmaking, millinery, laundering, sewing, telephone answering services, and the sale of crafts and antiques, which may, in the opinion of the Planning and Zoning Commission, following a public hearing, be properly carried on for compensation entirely within a dwelling by the occupant thereof. Home occupation shall not include those activities which are customarily conducted as a principal use within a principal structure. Planning and Zoning Commission shall permit those uses which, A, are clearly incidental and subordinate to the use of the dwelling for residential purposes, B, do not change the residential character of the dwelling in any visible manner, C, do not create objectionable noise, odor, vibrations, or unsightly conditions, D, do not create interference with radio and television reception in the vicinity, E, do not create health or safety hazards, F, do not generate pedestrian or automobile traffic other than that normally generated by the residents. G, do not give rise to outside storage. H, are not carried on or located within the garage portion of the main building or within the detached or within a detached accessory building. I, equipment used in such occupation shall be customarily incidental to the residential occupancy. J, there's only a couple more. J, no finished consumer goods shall be acquired outside the dwelling unit for sale in connection with a home occupation within the dwelling unit. K, no classes or meetings shall be held for the purpose of giving lessons or instructions for more than 2 students or pupils at a time. And L, home occupation permits are non-transferable. The reason why the applicants before you, we've had these before in the past. Essentially, they're trying to conduct a business, whether or not they, I believe they have to register with the town clerk, and certainly in this case, I believe they have a licensing process with the state, and they may in fact need a local approval in order to file that paperwork. So, having said that, there's the definitions and the things that you consider as part of this special permit, and the reason why the applicant would be here. But certainly, they can explain a little bit more about their business operations that they're proposing.
Okay, thanks for setting the table there, Rob. I appreciate it. I see David Posadas is with us, and we'll give him the opportunity to talk to us about his application and what he wants to do. David, if you could just identify yourself and your address, please.
Yep, David Posadas, 258 June Lane.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm applying for a federal firearms license through the ATF, which will allow me to transfer firearms, whether they're purchased by somebody else online and need to be transferred, or I purchase them and sell them out of state or to local people. In order to get the federal firearms license, I have to have approval of the planning and zoning in the town that I'm going to operate in.
Okay. Is that it, David?
Yeah, that sums it up as quick as I can.
Okay. I just got to start off by asking a couple questions just relative to the regulation and some of the things that Rob just talked about. If you were granted this approval, is there going to be any additional noise or odor or anything like that that might occur at that property as a result of that?
No, absolutely not.
Is there going to be, in your estimation, any increase in property or pedestrian traffic?
Not an over. I'm not going to be conducting so much business that there'd be traffic in my driveway. It's going to be transfers or sales. Any sales that I make out of the house would be something that wouldn't create any traffic at all if it was going out of state.
Okay. Do you have any outside storage at that property at this time? A shed or anything like that?
Yes, I do.
How big is that shed?
It's 12 by 11.
And you don't anticipate any additional outside storage being created as a result of this this business, I guess?
No, part of the ATF regulations is I need to designate a certain room of the house as being the where the transfers will be conducted, and it will be internally in the basement of the home.
So it won't be in the garage.
No.
Okay. And relative to item E, which talks about health and safety hazards, the transfer of firearms, you're not going to have target practice outside or allow people to fire guns outside of the house or even inside the house for that matter as a means of testing the product that they're buying?
No, absolutely not. I don't plan on doing any ammunition sales at all.
Okay. Are you teaching any classes or having any lessons at that property as a result of this application?
No, I am not.
Okay. So we'll open it up to commission members to see if they have any questions. Let's start with Commissioner Gwark.
This is Commissioner Gwark. Chairman, you touched on the safety and health. I guess the Sellington Health said there's no public health concerns, and the safety looks like it's going to be storing in the basement. I guess, and I really don't want to ask this question because it's none of my business really, but typically how many firearms do you think are going to be stored on site for sale?
Well, I'll have to register with the state of Connecticut also if I plan on selling more than 10. I would imagine within a year that I would, hopefully as part of the business, sell more than 10.
Okay, and you said in the basement, can you just go over your security down there, where they're going to be locked and kept, just an overall basically description of how you're going to keep the firearms?
Right. As part of the ATF permit or license to do this, they have to come in and inspect the home themselves. It's a very rigorous process with background, fingerprints. I have to have a safe on site for secure storage, which has to be inspected by the ATF, and they have to sign off that everything is going to be done and stored safely on site.
Okay, this is Commissioner Gwark. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Commissioner Locks?
Question I have is these items, these guns and everything else, do the individual person come to your house and, test them out or whatever, or is this strictly like you see it in a catalog or whatever, and then you would ship this out to the person?
Right. If somebody purchases a firearm from somewhere else online and I'm receiving it to do the transfer in state for them, they would come to the house. There'd be no testing or anything of the firearm. The firearms are all guaranteed by the manufacturer themselves. It would be a matter of them coming out, inspecting it, making sure that it's not damaged or scratched or something like that. But there's no ammunition that's going to be sold with the firearm, and no testing of the firearms anywhere here.
Okay. Now, how often do you think somebody's going to be coming to your house to do these transactions?
My plan is to do more sales outside, where I'd be transferring it to another federal firearms dealer outside of the state. In other words, somebody would purchase a firearm out of state from me, and I would ship it to a firearms dealer in another state. The in-house transfers would be limited to mostly, people that are close that I know, law enforcement, things like that.
Okay. Now, is this picked up by like UPS or FedEx and stuff like that? So there'll be truck movement going to your house?
It is shipped. If I receive items here, they are shipped. I don't expect any more traffic at the house than what's already here between Amazon and UPS and FedEx and everything else coming to the house.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. So Commissioner Coviello?
Mr. Chair, no additional questions. Sue pretty much covered everything I'm considering. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Commissioner Volpe?
Commissioner Volpe here. Yes, good evening. I do have a couple of questions. What type of firearm do you plan on selling out of this? Is it like everything, or is it long guns, handguns?
If it was a sale here in Connecticut, whatever's legal to purchase in Connecticut. If it's a sale from out of state, again, it would be whatever's legal in that state there.
Thank
So
you.
what I can
Okay.
sell, what I can sell here is governed by our Connecticut state laws.
Correct. Yes. Commissioner Volpe here again. Do you have a plan for vetting and doing background checks on people purchasing online from you? Is it going to be like I'm imagining like an Amazon kind of situation? Just maybe enlighten me on how this is going to work. Is it like a dating website for guns, or is it like match yourself? You can TM that, trademark that, match yourself.
There is an online website that does deal. It's like an eBay for guns. What happens when somebody from out of state purchases a gun is that the seller needs to send that firearm to another federal firearms licensed person, exactly what I'm applying for. And once they receive it, they vet that person by their state laws to make sure that they can legally possess it.
Okay, so just so I understand, David, that you could potentially sell a gun to somebody from another state who has less restrictive laws than we do here in Connecticut. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct, because their laws in their state are going to be what governs them.
Okay, and then just so Commissioner Volpe here again, just so I understand, and this is going to be predominantly conducted online, you had said. So is there going to be some type of signage outside of your house about this business?
No,
Signage.
No, I would be doing everything online.
Other than the required signage you would need at your door to notify the public that this is a place of business in that sense?
I don't think the ATF requires any signage on my door saying it's a place of business.
No, but I believe there's something that needs to be put out that says that firearms are being sold at this place. Is that incorrect, or?
I am not aware of any regulation that says that.
Okay, that could be on me. No big deal. My third question would be like, I see that you have the notice to abutters and things like that, but have you had a discussion with your fellow neighbors about carrying this business out in your basement?
Yes, I have. They have
And
had
what has been the...
no problem with it. My rear neighbor was supposed to send in an email. I'm not sure if she did in support or not.
Okay, Commissioner Volpe here again. Thank you so much, David, for answering my questions. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Christina. Commissioner Santago?
Thank you. So, Rob, is this the same as the cottage industry thing, or is this different?
If you're referring to the bakery cottage industry,
yeah,
totally different. The bakery cottage industry was something that was approved by the state legislature, and it's not regulated by the Department of Health. So it's a little bit of a different animal than this. This is your typical home occupation.
Here's why I asked, because a year ago or 2 years ago, as part of the cottage thing, we approved someone to CNC produce firearm components in their home as part of that. So when I saw this application, I said, oh, is this kind of sort of the same thing? But you're telling me that that's different than this.
Well, at the state level, it's different, but I believe we were treating it as home occupations.
We were treating it as that. So that thing got approved because we were treating it like this application. Is that fair?
Yes.
Because I'm just looking to see if we already did a precedent versus not. So
no. And in past history, I believe you have approved similar uses, and I think maybe have even denied one use that was similar. And I'd have to dig back and figure what that was. And that's just from my memory.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So, David, so if you can, I'm a little slow. So I don't understand what you're doing.
Okay, so there is
tough. Like, can you take me like process wise? Because like I ain't getting it. Like somebody goes to a website that calls you and you sell it back, or somebody comes to the house, or this. I don't get it. So, a very simple. Assume I'm in 5th grade. What are you doing?
Okay, so there is an online website that deals with firearms like eBay does with everything else. I can post a firearm for sale in there, and somebody in another state can purchase it, or in this state can purchase it, as long as it's legal for them to possess. If somebody from another state was to purchase the firearm, they would pay me for the firearm, and I would ship that firearm to another FFL in another state. So I can't ship the gun to an individual person. They have to be licensed to receive the gun from the ATF. So I would ship it to them. That person bought it out of state would then go to their local FFL. They would fill out all the paperwork, have the background vetting and everything that needed to be done, and the firearm could be transferred. At the same time, if somebody from in the state purchased it, they would come to my house, they would sit down with me, fill out the paperwork. I would contact the Connecticut State Police, give them all the information. They would vet the person, and they would give me an authorization number in order to sell the firearm, to transfer it to that person. If somebody else bought a firearm from another person out of state and needed to bring it to Connecticut, they could have it shipped to me, and I would do the same process again. So I've been in law enforcement for over 30 years. And we do a lot of those types of things as law enforcement, whether it's selling a gun or buying a gun and having it shipped to an FFL, and that's what I'm looking to get into.
So you're kind of the middle guy.
Yes.
Versus the.
No, I wouldn't say the middle guy. I would be selling firearms too, but I would be the middleman on a transfer.
Middleman on a transfer, right. So, in regards to my concern, I think others, in regards to the inventory,
yes,
that you would have at any one time, because I'm looking at, does not create health or safety hazards. When word gets out, oh, this got X number of firearms. I got, issue there because you have there. So at any one time, how much inventory do you anticipate keeping?
I don't have an exact number on that, but when the ATF comes in, I have to have a secure holding, in other words, a gun safe large enough to hold whatever inventory I'm going to have. And it has to be kept in that safe, which is open to inspection at any time to the ATF. They can come in anytime on a spot check and go inspect the safe, the room, make sure the books are secure and everything else.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I'm not going to be keeping a huge inventory. I would probably have a safe that could hold, a certain amount of handguns, and maybe a couple long guns.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Commissioner Salka?
Yes, I have a couple of questions for David. Will you be doing any advertising other than what you talked about on the internet itself?
It'll be strictly the internet. I wouldn't be doing any advertising on my property, just internet, through either the online thing first to see how things go, and then possibly through like a web commerce site, something that I would set up myself.
Okay, so you'd have your own website then?
Eventually, yes.
Okay. Another question, will you be doing any weapon modification on site?
No, not on site. I wouldn't be doing any modifications. It would be sales.
Okay, and my final question would be, once the ATF or whoever does the initial inspection, you mentioned that the ATF could stop in at any one time. Do you have an idea of how often that really happens? Is it a minimum of an annual or semi-annual, or is it just, haphazardly?
I'm not exactly sure at this point. Once I submit my application, I have to sit down with an ATF agent for 6 to 8 hours to go over the regulations, the inspection and everything. That's the time I would find that out. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, and a final question. Is the town, for example, the town police involved at all in this for inspecting your property at any time? Or is it basically an ATF issue?
It's an ATF issue for the inspection. I have to notify the chief of police as part of my application process, so he knows what's going on in the house.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's it.
Thanks, Bob. So David, if I could just follow up on a couple of questions, just so I'm clear. You're subject to federal and state of Connecticut laws when it comes to the sale of firearms. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And by virtue of that, you're prohibited to sell certain firearms that the state of Connecticut prohibits the sale of, correct?
That's correct.
And or the transfer of those firearms, correct?
As long as I can transfer them out of state, is if the state laws in that state are if it's legal to transfer it, I can.
And that's a provision that's allowed under the federal rules or regulations or guidelines.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do you currently have a pistol permit?
Yes, I do. Like I said,
How long have you?
I've been
Go
in
ahead.
law enforcement for over 30 years.
Okay. How long have you had that permit?
I've had that permit for probably as long. There was a short period of time I didn't have one as a police officer. I've probably had this one currently for 8 or 9 years, and prior to that, 10 years. There was a gap in between where it lapsed.
What happened there?
You don't need a pistol permit.
Was it a simple administrative thing, or was there something else that happened that caused that lapse?
No, as law enforcement, you're not required to have a state pistol permit. Okay. So at a period of time, I let it lapse, and then later on, some of the laws changed about possessing firearms, and it was safer for me to have a pistol permit and the law enforcement.
Have those permits ever been revoked or suspended, or any action taken against those?
No, I wouldn't be able to do my job if I had that revoked.
Okay, I understand. I just want to make sure that we have that on the record. So, okay. So at this point, we'll open it up to the public. If there's anyone who'd like to testify in favor of this application.
Mr. Chairman, Rob Phillips here. I'll just, I don't know if anybody's going to speak, but I'll just mention that we did receive a document from a Lucille and Robert Cusano, 284 Jude Lane, writing in support of the above home occupation application. As neighbors whose property abuts that of the applicant, we have come to know Mr. Posadas to be a hardworking family man, an outstanding neighbor, or who has assisted us in times of need and always keeps a watchful eye for any neighborhood issues. We believe his concern for the well-being of his neighbors in the neighborhood will certainly carry over to his meeting all the requirements of a successful home occupation in this neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. And we received that. I think that's up on the website, Rob.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anyone else out there who'd like to speak in favor of this application at this time? You want to unmute the call-in?
We don't have
a couple call.
We do?
I thought I'm looking. I see two there.
My screen didn't see. Okay, I just unmuted the call-ins.
Either the call-in users have a desire to testify in support of this application? Leave them open for a second, Rob. Is there anyone who'd like to testify in opposition to this application?
Yes, I would.
Okay, if you could just identify yourself with your address, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Megan Schmidt. I'm at 137 Masters Drive in Southington.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so I think since the federal license requires your approval, obviously it's within the power of this commission to reject the idea of firearms being stored and moved about in this location. I think your constituents are concerned about gun proliferation and the use of the zone really changing the residential character of the neighborhood. I think the fact that there's 120 guns per 100 people in this country does not support an urgent need to create this business, at least not worthy of a variance to allow it in a residential zone. There may be no health and safety concerns in terms of leaking chemicals into the ground, but a legal business, even with background checks, can still contribute to the problems caused by gun crimes. Since a 2013 Institute of Medicine report states that almost all guns used in criminal acts enter circulation via initial legal transactions. So you have the risk of robbery, you have the risk of strawman purchases. Even if Mr. Posadas does everything right, he very well may provide guns for illegal activity in this town. And the next most common source is unscrupulous licensed dealers. So Mr. Posadas may be a totally upstanding citizen, he probably very much is, with character references from his neighborhood to support that, but we just don't know. And he could be targeted and corrupted after the fact. The Planning and Zoning Committee really doesn't need to decide on his character. You can just eliminate that risk by simply not allowing it in our town, starting with Jude Lane. It's a residential area. We should be worried about the people that are coming and going for these gun exchanges, increasing traffic in the neighborhood. In fact, there is precedent for you to deny this. In 1999 or thereabout, there was an application by Thomas Kubala to renew an existing permit to sell firearms on Mount Vernon Road, which was initially rejected. And I agree with Mr. Vinci, who denied it based on the fact that it wasn't zoned for business. In appeals that case, the applicant was a restorer and a custom shop. So it was argued that it was an antique, not finished goods. It was also very small volumes, like 15 a year. If you approve Mr. Posadas, it sounds like the business success would involve significant volumes of firearms being moved throughout this residential area. I can't imagine that there would be a lack of traffic, as he stated. He stated that it wouldn't be any more deliveries in the residential neighborhood than we get from Amazon purchases, but this is a business based on volume that's inconsistent with relative deliveries, and it's why we have residential zoning. He described it as a buying and selling of finished goods on what he described as an eBay for guns and his e-commerce site. Also, the previous case did not maintain functional inventory. You don't have that assurance here. It will be stored on site. Your concerns about storage are valid. He doesn't have to keep the numbers that he quotes to you, which he did not provide. It can be as big a business as he can grow it to. And that's for that other example, building components. I think there was the other example that the commissioner brought up. That also was not finished goods with an inventory of guns in a basement being bought and sold online. And online or not, every sale or facilitation of a sale requires an in-person handoff. An ATF inspection does not relieve my concerns. The ATF will not concern themselves with our town if you approve this zoning. So while this is a legal business subject to federal and state laws, this business belongs on Queen Street or a commercial zoning. So please consider the points of zoning, traffic, transient people in residential areas, safety of the town, the volumes, the inventory, and the ability for guns to end up in our town using criminal activity as you deliberate this impactful decision, which could create a new precedent for gun sales in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Megan. I appreciate your comments. Commission members, anyone have a question for Megan? I don't see any. Megan, thank you again for your comments. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify in opposition to this application? I don't see any. Can I just ask a question of you, David, and maybe Rob, you can weigh in on this also. Under 2-08J, which states no finished consumer goods shall be acquired outside the dwelling unit for sale in connection with the home occupation within the dwelling unit. Does that apply to this, the transfer piece of this application at all?
Who do you want to start with, me?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, so typically, home occupation regulations, they're not unique to Southington. Typically, what you're trying to achieve is control over maintaining the residential aesthetics, look and feel activity that it would be consistently expected as an accessory type thing in a residential zone. So certainly employees showing up or high traffic with regard to deliveries and coming and going from the property. Any other of those safety and objectionable noise types concerns, anything that's going to appear to not be consistent with a residential neighborhood. So some of these businesses certainly have occasional deliveries or occasional pickups, most of the time you're not going to see a situation where there's, constant activity, especially, I don't even think our regulations would allow any employees at all. I know in my past experience, there has been an allowance for an employee or two. But in this case, I think it's much more strict here in Southington. So, it's really it's really a test of, what the presentation is, the nature of the business, and whether or not you believe it could be kind of hidden in the background, so to speak, of the residential character of the neighborhood.
Okay, so David, to that point, are you planning on having any other employee involved in this, or is it just yourself?
Just myself.
Okay, and again, I think you answered this question already, but what's your anticipated sales at that location under this application if it's approved?
Sales at the location itself, like I said before, I'm planning on keeping it to a very small group of people. Mostly other law enforcement officers that are looking to do transfers. Most of the sales I'm looking to do are things that I would be shipping outside of the house to other FFLs from online sales.
So you think most of the sales or most of your business activity will be based on the online sale piece of this?
That's my plan, yes.
Okay. Okay. David, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say before we move on to the public hearing on this.
I did do some online searches, and maybe you can check your records, but there is a an FFL registered to a residential address in Southington currently. I believe it expires in 2022. There are also 9 other registered FFLs in Southington, some directly across the street from condo associations and surrounded by residential houses, which is why I even put the application in to begin with. It had already been done as far as I could tell. The traffic here, like I said, I'm planning on keeping it minimal. I'm looking to do online sales, and everything that would be done by state, federal law here in Connecticut, and whatever state laws are wherever the firearms are being shipped would govern them.
Okay. Any commissioner have any other additional questions? You got to unmute yourself.
Commissioner Volpe here. I do want to point out something in our zoning regulations. We're looking at like dressmaking, millinery, laundering, sewing. It does also say, that HO shall not include those activities conducted as principal use within a principal structure. I just would say we don't currently have anything in our regulations. If this is something we'd be interested in, I would probably recommend that we consider that. So that, as our constituent said during her public comments, that in case this is something that we were to be reproached with again, I kind of go away from doing it, not having anything already in our regulations. And from looking at similar towns, they very much seem to put alcohol and firearm sale in residential, properties, in residential zones, together. And I don't think that that's probably a poor thing to say right now, but there are other surrounding towns that do have something in their regulation regarding the sale of firearms in residential zones. And it just seems that we need to kind of residential zones. Our residential zones should be protected in that sense. So I want to point that out to the commissioners, that it does kind of say too, health and safety hazards as outlined in the documents presented are fine, but we did hear concerns from our constituents. So take those into account.
Okay, thanks, Christina. Any other commission member have any comments? Is there any objection to closing the public hearing on this?
Nope.
Okay, so hearing none, we'll close the public hearing on that and move on to our business meeting. Rob, do we need an actual motion to table 8A since the public hearing was continued, or do we just pass that completely?
Just by consensus.
Okay. So do I need a voice vote on that, or do I just ask if there's an objection?
Well, I think the reality is the hearing's still open, so you really can't take any action anyway. So, yeah.
Okay, so we'll just table 8A, given that the public hearing is still open. Moving on to item 8B, Lovely Development Incorporated zone change application to change the zone from an R 2025 to an ARC. Property located at 45 Pacer Lane, owned by Dennis Crispino, parcel size 5.75 acres. This is zone change number 564. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve item B.
Do we have a second?
I'll make a motion to second. This is Sue.
Okay. So we have a motion from Commissioner Salka, a second from Commissioner Locke. Is there any discussion on this application?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Salka here.
Go ahead, Bob.
The reason for my motion is that I think that with the zone change that we have, I think we have more flexibility in working with the builder to make sure that the concerns of our constituents are met. For example, buffer, the ability to perhaps move the buildings around a little bit to give them a bigger buffer versus another alternative where they go in and just, strip the land and put the houses 10 feet from the property line, allowing pools and all the other accessories that can happen on individual homes. So quite honestly, I think this is appropriate for the area. And I think it gives us some greater flexibility when it comes before us, for approval.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Any other commission member have anything they'd like to say at this time?
This is Sue.
Go ahead, Sue.
I want to go and say that I think it will go and match into the neighborhood and not devalue the other surrounding homes. Also, I feel that it's not a burden to our town to maintain the roads and everything else. And even the grounds are going to be kept all uniform and all nice and tidy. So I feel it's a good move on our end. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sue. Any other commission member wish to speak at this time?
Yeah, Bob, this is Commissioner Coviello. I just wanted to kind of echo what I think Peter was alluding to earlier. I think this is the intent of what we were looking at when we did put this overlay in place. So I think it, in my mind, kind of creates a community within a community. And I think Mark will do a nice job in really making sure it's properly buffered and really taking the residents into consideration here. Not necessarily a stipulation, but one thing I'd like to consider is that we stick to the spirit and what we saw in the plan today, and we don't come back with 18 or 20 homes. But I know Mark and Sev will do the right thing there, and we'll land with something good.
Yeah, we still have to see a site plan at some point. So
that's right.
So that would dictate what that actually looks like in a more detailed fashion.
I just don't want my decision to be dictated on what I saw today and see something drastically different, when it comes to site plan. I know that wouldn't happen, but just throwing it out there.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Joe. Is there any other commission member who wishes to say something at this time?
Mr. Chair, Peter.
Peter, go ahead.
I think, Bob, you made a very good point in regards to flexibility. I hadn't thought about it in those terms. When I initially saw both pictures, I was like, what are we really gaining here in regards to having an arch versus not? And I think the conversation tonight about how a regular subdivision is put in, and I think Mark was very clear about that in regards to you strip everything down and put it in, and then the homeowner decides how many trees they want versus the builder doing it, if I could be blunt about it. And in which case, we as commission members who are trying to preserve some kind of green space, which is why we did the arch thing, was to try to get more, green stuff in developments, knowing full well that you can't just come in, as Rob said, and say, no, I don't want you building. Like, we can't do that. It's against the law for us to say that. So I think Bob's comments about flexibility of buffer, green space, and just in general, Joe's comments about how these things are put in, I think I'm sold on that point. I was kind of unsure coming into tonight, just in looking at documents, but in hearing that, I think I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Is there any other commission member who wishes to say something at this time?
Yeah, Commissioner Volpe here too. I just want to remind everyone too that, in regards to the public comments that we heard from constituents, that there hasn't been much flexibility between the developer and the proposal and the constituents that abut the proposal area. So moving forward, I would like to see some sort of homogeny in how this goes, because we're talking about preserving trees and all we've been told thus far is that they've been torn down. So conceptualize what this vision is or what have you, but we heard from people tonight about their concerns about the trees that have already been taken down. And I also, the open space thing is great until it's tangibly used as outlined in our POCD. It should be able to be used by people in the town for a purpose and not just to have trees that are green there, because we saw that on both plans. The only difference was that one said open space. And Sev did kind of outline some ideas, bringing up the wilderness and other things, but I would like to see on a final site plan some sort of concrete use for that, or else saying that we're giving our town open space while we overdevelop is not what people wanted to hear. And, a year ago, when, the last one was approved, the South End one, we, many were quoted that are still sitting on this commission that they wanted to try to prevent overdevelopment. So I express these concerns. I respect all of my commissioners. You're all so well articulated. But, on behalf of the people, there were some concerns brought up tonight that counter what was presented and what's being said in this vision for this parcel. Digressed. Need a Red Bull.
Okay, Christina, thank you. Is there any other commission member that has anything else to
Mr.
add
Chairman,
to this
I'd like
discussion?
to make Commissioner Self would like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Bob.
We keep talking about, green space, et cetera. And what concerns me is, and I think Peter brought it up very well, is that a developer buys a piece of property and can go in there and do just about anything he wants within our regulations. So when you talk about overdevelopment, when a builder buys the property, it's up to the homeowner or the property owner that sells the property. We can't control that, and I think that we need to focus on what we can do versus what we cannot do. We cannot stop a builder from buying a piece of property. Well, if the builder is deciding to buy that property, then we can get involved and do the best we can for the residents of the town, taking into consideration a number of the comments, like, for example, that were made tonight. I think that we are the buffer between the constituents and the builder to make sure that they're doing the right thing. That's the comments I'd like to make. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Bob. And I'll just add, I think that you hit it on the head a little bit, Bob. This is an application for a zone change, and the real meat of what this looks like will be the site plan that will be forthcoming to us at some time. And that's really where we have the opportunity to make sure that the comments that were brought up by Catherine and Kelsey and Joshua and Ed, that we can make sure that those things are addressed, and that Mark and his group are sensitive to addressing those in the site plan application. I think that Mark does a pretty good job, has a pretty good history of hearing those things and doing the best that he can. So I look forward to seeing that site plan at some point in the future and having a bite at that apple a little bit. But I kind of agree that this is probably the best thing to do with this property, given the option that we have. So is there any other comments from commission members?
Commissioner Volpe here.
Go ahead,
We say
Christina.
that every time. We say that every time, that there's no other thing we could do with this parcel, but Rob pointed out tonight that there may have been some sort of subdivision. We had a discussion. I said, go ahead, move forward. No comments have been made since then about that, but open space that just sits like an island in somebody's backyard that doesn't connect to any other open space abutting it doesn't necessarily conform to our POCD. And I'm concerned about that. So I understand everyone will have another say, but they're here right now and they're telling us their concerns. And I think that, that is something that we can't always just say, well, I don't know what else this could be. I mean, this is already a pretty dense residential area. So concerns have already been put forth about the timing of the development and things like that. I mean, this is already to have this zone in the middle of this and going off the promise of open space that doesn't connect to anything else. It's just, I'm a little lost on that one, but that's all I got. I mean, I gotta say that much.
Thanks, Christina.
Just for Commissioner Volpe, it's not supposed to connect to anything. That's what the arch was. It was to have some degree of place where it wasn't connected to the homeowner and add a buffer. That's what it was. It was a usable open space. It was just green. That was it. That was the point. So it didn't.
I get that, but
so it didn't have to be usable. It just had to be green that we wouldn't normally get. That was it. So I mean, if you're against the arch thing, I get that. I respect that. That's cool. But this is conforming to what the arch was supposed to be.
Commissioner Volpe here, but it's a contradiction then, to say like, well, it's good to have the arch because it allows for open space, but then also saying, well, it doesn't matter. It's just, it just seems like, where is the win for our constituents in that? It seems like since 2015, there has been an increase in approval of this zone overlay in residential areas that have residential density. There's been other ones. So, and we say that it needs to happen for this because there's also going to be this agreement of open space. In the POCD, it is recommended that open space connect our trails, connect to each other, that they facilitate like a long-term longevity of our town. And I'm just trying to have that mindset, right? For when I turn 55 and hopefully I'm still here, I want to understand that the landscape of our town and what it's going to look like 50 years from now, having these developments, knowing that they have the open space, is it going to conform with the ideals laid out in the 2015 POCD? And I don't know if it does at this point, in my opinion.
If Rob Phillips, I can just jump in real quick, just to maybe frame why this zone was created, or at least supported. It's what's called a floating zone, and that means it's just hanging around out there over over the zones they can land in, which in this case would be R40, R2025, and R12. So only those three residential zones can this floating zone land in, and there are requirements for consideration, minimum requirements. It has to be 5 acres, for example, minimum land area. And I think the important takeaway, and I know there's a lot of balancing that has to happen here with any kind of proposal, but the important takeaway for me, my professional standpoint, is that we're always constantly trying to make sure that we provide housing diversity, that there's different options available for folks out there. And we're not just, painting the town in one specific opportunity. So you want to be able to have people be able to age in place and also find, options that maybe aren't necessarily older housing stock, but that is newer, that may be a little bit more attainable from a financial standpoint. That's why part of the reason why there's a 10% requirement of affordable in here. And I think that was the overall overriding goal here. But certainly there are other concerns with as far as connecting open space and preserving open space. And in this case, because it's a site plan, that open space that they're proposing is actually, privately held, I guess is the best way to put it. The homeowners association is going to have control over that. So it's not necessarily public access. But does it provide more green space? Certainly not developable over a subdivision. Certainly in this case, I would argue. But so there are things to consider here. But I just wanted to kind of just make sure we're framing it in the way that the reason why this was created was to provide more of those opportunities. And certainly if the commission finds that this is a proposal that maybe doesn't work in this area, that's exactly what this process would be for. So having said that, I don't want to go too far and go on too far here, but I just wanted to make sure
All
that
right.
was pretty clear.
I appreciate that, Rob. Is there anything else that any other commissioner would like to say at this time?
This is Commissioner Gork. I might as well get my 2 cents in. The argument about with this, I mean, this is just a zone change. We don't have the final plans, but they're promising the 20% of land, or they're saying 20% of land as open space, and some people are taking it as maybe, well, it's a walking trail, a bike path, or a field to play ball, or a park. But there's a concern about wildlife too that was brought up. So if you build all that stuff, then where are the wildlife going to go if they don't have a natural habitat? So it seems in this case, the open space is more like that, a buffer for the natural wildlife to live. So that's my take.
Thanks, Jeff. Rob, could you call the roll on this, please?
Sure. Gork?
Commissioner Gork, yes.
And just to be clear, this is a motion to approve. Locke?
Correct.
Sherlock, yes.
Volpe?
Mr. Volpe, no.
Coviello?
Commissioner Coviello, yes.
Montego?
Centego, yes.
Salka?
Yes.
And Chair Hammersley?
Hammersley is a yes. 6-1 motion passes. Applications approved. Item 8C, David Posadas, home occupation application to conduct mostly online sales of firearms, and will be accepting transfers which will be conducted on the premises with the parties involved. Property located at 258 Jew Lane in an R2025 zone. Housing occupation application number 74. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Salka makes a motion to approve HO number 74.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Chicago with a second. Any discussion on this?
Commissioner Volpe here again, on a roll tonight.
Go ahead, Christina.
You know, I do think there is some legitimate concerns here about having this in such a residential area. I feel like I'm echoing myself tonight, but I really do. I mean, it just seems like, you know, it is something that it should be handled like the alcohol example that I gave you earlier. I know that it's something completely different. I understand the necessity of it. I respect his 30 years. Like, that's amazing. I couldn't even imagine. And I respect the mission of that business. However, I just am concerned at the expresses of the constituents and the residents that live in that area having this business there, especially with how many times the applicant said that he plans to conduct out-of-state sales. Understanding the process of it and everything that goes with it, I'm just concerned about having such a business in a residential basement surrounded by so many residential properties that have children. And again, I question the framework of our town without any other zoning regulations to kind of discuss this issue. We are setting a precedent here with approval, if it does happen, without anything in our regulations for it. So we could be opening up something, you know, I really think it's a formidable allowance with little to no covenants within our regulations. We kind of have nothing to go off of, and I'm uncomfortable with that. I think it should be taken more seriously than that. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Thanks, Christina. Any other commission member wish to comment on this application before we vote on it? Okay, Rob, can you call the roll, please?
Sure.
Commissioner Gork, yes.
Fox?
Fox, yes.
Volpe?
Volpe, no.
Coviello?
Commissioner Coviello, yes.
Montego?
Yes.
Salka?
Commissioner Selfie, yes.
Chairman Hammersley?
Hammersley's a yes. Application's approved. Item D, Hillcrest Homes LLC, request for a 5-year extension of a site plan approval, 508 and 544 Meriden Waterbury Turnpike, SPR number 1485. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Self can make the motion to approve SPR 1485.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second the motion, Sue Lux.
Sue Locks is the second. Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about this? Because I think there's a little bit of history on this that people might appreciate knowing.
Yeah, just I'm not sure if you're not speaking, make sure you mute yourself because I'm kind of listening here. And I'm not sure where the feedback's coming from. But anyways, so the Hillcrest request for extension, to kind of give you a very, very quick executive summary. Back during the Great Recession, the legislature had an act for an extension of an original approval of a site plan that predated on July 1st, 2011, just to keep it simple. And so that original approval was actually made good for 9 years instead of 5. So in 2014, the applicant, and the one important part of this is that this was an 830G application originally, and that did go to legal settlement. And what came out of the settlement was approved by the commission, obviously by court direction. And and so move forward to 2014. They had submitted a request for a 5-year extension, and I'd written a letter at the time saying it was premature, it wasn't necessary because they were under the 9-year original approval. And so they were supposed to come back, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, I can't recall off the top of my head, but either way, they did not come back, and we discovered recently that they're actually operating without that 5-year extension. So in my experience, retroactively approving a 5-year extension is not a problem. And especially in this case, you have an ongoing development. They're trying to complete it, and it was subject to a court settlement. So I would highly recommend that we approve this extension just to keep it clean.
Okay. Jim Grappone, I see is here. Maybe you're the best person to answer this question. I know there was a concern about some sediment runoff that was occurring over there. I think it was earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken. I think Paul Chaplinsky brought it up in one correspondence, if I remember correctly, and you addressed that. Could you just speak to that real briefly?
Yeah, I think the developer chose to do the work in phases, but what happened was opened up a lot of the future phases by disturbances, I'll call it, without actually providing for temporary seeding or other erosion control measures. So what happened is the silt that's out there is very turbid when it mixes with water, and the detention basins that are out there do not settle the material that's out there. We tried working with the developer and getting that to even by way of a chemical that could be put in the ponds to try and take out the murkiness of the water. So between that and the construction of the homes, not seeding the areas in a timely manner, sweeping the streets as often as he could, and keeping track on that, there was a lot of disturbance there that caused a lot of downstream runoff issues as far as murky water. I think that's been under control lately because he's toward the tail end of his development. So he's gotten a little bit better on doing that. Downstream, there was an issue out on Blatchley Avenue with runoff. We since then worked with the developer to make some pond improvements, including the outlet control structure. In fact, those improvements were just recently completed on the pond. And the town's going to be doing some additional downstream runoff work, improvements, I should say. So I think it's under control. But that's the long and short
Okay.
of the answer.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So it sounds like you guys are monitoring it and you're working with the developer to make sure that any runoff or sediment problems out there are minimized and addressed as quickly as possible. Is that fair to say?
That's fair. Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Are there any other comments from commission members? Rob, you want to call the roll, please?
Gwark,
Commissioner Gwark, yes.
Locks, yes.
Volpe,
Commissioner Volpe, yes.
Coviello,
Commissioner Coviello, yes.
Centego,
Centego, yes.
Salka,
Commissioner Selka, yes.
Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item E, F, and G are kind of dealing with the same thing. So, Rob, do you want to fill us in on what's going on with that?
Yeah, that's that was an 830G application that was filed, I think back in May. I think it was officially received by the commission in your second meeting in May. It's under the 830G statute, there's certain requirements that need to be submitted as part of the application. That includes a zoning amendment, zoning change, and a site plan, along with other materials. I will say that the applicant has requested an extension of all of this to provide more information. But certainly, as I report today, it's an incomplete application, and we don't have a fee for any of the applications at this point in time. So that's the status.
Okay. So do we need to take up each of these separately, Rob, or can we do them as a group?
Yeah, I think as a group's fine. Because they're all part and parcel of each other. One can't stand without the other.
Okay. They're all a request for a 65-day extension, as Rob spoke to. It's an application from Brian Macarello on a zoning regulation on at 34 William Street. And these are zoning application number 605, CC 565, and SPR 1800. Can we get a motion on those three items on our agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for items E, F, and G that we deny each of those applications without prejudice.
A second on that. Do we have a second?
I guess just Commissioner Santego, can I ask a question first?
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. Go ahead.
So, Rob, this is incomplete. So we didn't get enough stuff. Is that what it is, or did we get any stuff? I guess when we say incomplete, normally like we grant extensions, it's cool if people make a good faith effort, but if not, then we don't. So I guess where do we stand really with this?
All right, so we haven't received anything since the original submittal back in May. Normally, under non-coronavirus conditions, we have 65 days to open the hearing, 35 days to close it, and 65 days to make a decision. And there's a 65-day extension that can be granted by the commission upon request at any point in time in that process. The reason why you have those timelines is there are certain things, like I mentioned earlier, that subdivision site plans are subject to automatic approval. So if we were to receive something on a napkin, literally on a napkin, on the front counter with no application form, no fee, anything, we have to treat it like a ticking time bomb as far as the timelines go. So the commission needs to act on anything that may be subject to automatic approval. And otherwise, literally, it's approved if you don't act within a time frame. And that site plan is the one portion of this that's concerning. Now, there is that additional time available with the governor's executive order 7I, but we haven't heard anything from the applicant as far as what they're going to do here. I can tell you that there's a legal challenge at the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding this property, and I'm not sure if this is associated with that directly. But I can tell you that we don't have the information we need, and we don't have a fee for any of the applications. So that's all I'm reporting. You can make an argument either way.
No, cool. Thank you for saying that. So by denying, the clock starts over? Stops.
Stops. They have to reapply.
Come back.
Got it. Okay.
I think, Peter, that Bob Solka's motion will deny without prejudice. So we're not making a decision about whether we approve for this or not. They can come back and reapply again. It just takes this piece of it and gets it off the table until they make a decision about whether they want to come back or not.
Cool. I'll second the motion then. Got it. With you.
Seeing how they haven't paid the fee, I mean, they're really not losing anything other than time.
This is Commissioner Gore.
Can I just ask a quick one? So are they, we just haven't heard, or are they not responding to us?
Well, I am not inclined to allow the commission to open the public hearing or recommend that they open the public hearing because we don't have a complete application. So you could open the public hearing. There's no one here to present it, but you can't close it without that information, really. So it's just from a matter of procedure. I just don't like opening anything if we don't have a full package, especially when this is, state statute where the information needs to be submitted as part of the application. Specifically says that in 830G. As part of the initial application, you must submit, and they haven't done that.
Okay, fair enough.
Commissioner Gwark, I think you had a question.
Yes, this is Commissioner Gwark. Rob, is there a timeline for when they could reapply again, or there's no penalty to them going forward?
They can reapply tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Does any other commissioner have any questions or anything they want to say about this at this time?
No, thanks for the clarification, Rob. That was helpful.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Salka, seconded by Commissioner Santago, to deny the request for a 65-day extension without prejudice. Rob, can you call the roll, please?
Gwark?
Commissioner Gwark, yes.
Locks?
Locks, yes.
Volpe?
Commissioner Volpe, yes.
Coviello?
Commissioner Coviello, yes.
Santago?
Santago, yes.
Salka?
Salka, yes.
And Chairman Hammersley?
Hammersley's a yes. Motion to deny without prejudice passes 7-0 on E, F, and G. Item H, release of a 5,220 erosion and sediment bond for the ARC of Southington, 201 West Main Street. This is SPR 1728. Jim, are you here to talk to us about this at all, or Jim Grappone?
Yep, the project's complete. It's ready for action. It's all stable to site.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the release of this bond?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Salka make a motion to approve SPR 1728.
Okay, can we get a second?
This is Peter Santago. I'll second.
Thanks, Peter. Is there any discussion? Rob, can you call the roll, please? Do we need a roll on this, or do we just do a voice vote?
No, I just by consensus if everybody's in favor.
Okay, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Voice vote, motion passes. Item I, release of a $1,350 erosion and sediment bond at 834 Mount Vernon Road. This is S1260ZP 13167. Jim Grappone, where are we on this?
No, ready for action.
It's not ready for action.
No, ready for action. I'm sorry.
Oh, ready for action. Can we get a motion to approve the release of this bond?
Commissioner Salka make a motion to approve the S1260/ZP 13167.
Motion from Salka. Do I have a second?
You couldn't make it shorter, huh?
I tested you. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second. Santago.
Santago with a second. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Any administrative items, Rob?
No administrative items this time. Although I will say, I
Okay.
apologize as usual if I muted you too much. I just kept trying to cut down on background.
Yeah, sure.
You know, Rob, with great power comes great responsibility, so you got to be careful when you use that sometimes. Under item 10, item scheduled for a public hearing, I see we have one item listed underneath there. Is there anything else, Rob?
That's it right.
Any new applications that we received?
No, just the item to be scheduled.
Okay. With that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Selk, make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Salka, do we have a second?
Second.
Santiago, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, thank you all. Great job.
Yep.
Good night.
See
Thank
you all
you.
on the 18th.
All right.
Okay.
Bob, take the Yankee sign down behind you.
Take what?
Take the Yankee sign down behind you. It's embarrassing.
What Yankee sign?
That's you, Mr. Hammersley, Chairman.
Oh.
Hey, it's almost the end of July, and the Yankees haven't lost a game, and the Red Sox haven't won one, so I'm doing pretty good. I never thought I'd say that, but I can this year, so.
Right.
We're all
I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it this week. 2 days.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.